paying $500 for a new oxygen sensor. Your mechanic might say it's broken, but in many cases, it's just dirty. That soot confuses your car's computer and ruins your fuel economy. But here's the truth. In some cases, you can fix it at home for under $10. In this video, we'll show you 9 simple tricks to clean your oxygen sensor without even removing it. Trick number 9, the fuel additive tanking method. Many drivers see a check engine light and immediately assume it means a $500 repair at the shop. Most of the time, that's not the case. They think the oxygen sensor is broken, but in reality, it's often just covered in a thick layer of sticky carbon. Stop-and-go traffic and low-quality fuel make this buildup worse. That carbon layer basically blinds the sensor, so it can't properly read how much fuel your engine is burning. Instead of tearing the car apart, you can start with something simple, a liquid fuel system cleaner that works while you drive. Just choose a high-quality cleaner that says O2, sensor safe, or catalytic converter cleaner on the label. These products don't burn like fuel. Instead, they create a cleaning vapor that travels through the exhaust system. As it passes the oxygen sensor, it slowly breaks down the buildup, causing rough idling and poor performance. No tools, no mess, no mechanic needed. Best way to use it is when your fuel tank is around a quarter full, so the mixture stays strong. After pouring it in, drive about 20 miles to let it circulate. You may notice better throttle response and smoother idling almost immediately. It's a cheap first step that can save you from replacing parts you don't actually need. And if the check engine light stays on after a full tank, then the buildup is likely too heavy, and a more direct cleaning method is needed. Trick number 8, the intake vacuum sip. Imagine a busy repair shop where a simple fuel additive isn't enough to cut through heavy buildup. In high-pressure situations like this, waiting for a full tank to circulate can take too long, so mechanics go direct. They discovered something clever. The engine's own air intake system can be used to deliver cleaning chemicals exactly where they're needed in seconds. This method uses manifold vacuum. The same system that supports your brake booster can actually pull a fine mist of sensor-safe cleaner into the engine. When the engine is held at around 2,000 revolutions per minute, that vacuum turns the liquid into a fast-moving vapor, spreading it through the system. As it exits through the exhaust, it hits the oxygen sensor area and helps break down stubborn carbon buildup that normal fuel additives can't reach. Think of it like an internal pressure wash for the sensor. If you see light white smoke from the exhaust, that's usually just the residue being burned off, not something to panic about. The whole process can take around 10 minutes and may improve throttle response and idle stability fairly quickly. But while chemical cleaning helps inside the system, sometimes the final reset happens when the car is driven under real load on the open road. Trick number 7, the Italian tune-up. Long before digital diagnostic tools, drivers noticed a pattern. Cars stuck in city traffic slowly became sluggish and less responsive. The old school fix wasn't a chemical, it was the highway. Mechanics would tell drivers to blow the cobwebs out of the engine. Constant short trips and low-speed driving let carbon build up on the oxygen sensor like dust, slowly confusing the engine's computer. Worse, short drives don't heat the exhaust enough for the system to clean itself naturally, which leads to poor fuel economy and lazy sensor readings. The solution is what's known as the Italian tune-up, a high-heat, no-tool method. By driving at highway speeds in a lower gear, like 3rd instead of 5th, for about 15 to 20 minutes, you raise exhaust temperatures significantly. That heat helps burn off soft carbon deposits on the sensor. Think of it like a self-cleaning cycle for your exhaust system. The buildup turns into fine ash and gets pushed out through the tailpipe. It's a zero-cost way to help reset fuel efficiency and restore more accurate sensor readings. Done occasionally, it can even act as preventive maintenance before a check engine light ever appears. Trick number 6, the vinegar and baking soda bubble. In the early days of auto repair, a fouled oxygen sensor was basically seen as a death sentence for fuel economy. Old school mechanics would pull a carbon-caked sensor and shake their heads. Once those deposits baked on, they believed the sensor was poison, and only replacement made sense. Back then, they'd often just replace it outright, charging hundreds of dollars. But what they missed was a surprisingly simple approach. This method uses basic household items, white vinegar and baking soda. By carefully removing the sensor and soaking just the tip in vinegar, The mild acid helps break down hardened carbon deposits that heat alone sometimes can't remove. Adding a small amount of baking soda creates a fizzing reaction, which helps lift loosened debris away from the sensing surface. Over time, the liquid may turn dark gray or black. That's the carbon coming off. It's a low-cost restoration trick that can help recover sensor responsiveness, especially if the car has been running rich, stumbling at idle, or struggling emissions tests. Compared to harsh methods like using a torch, which can damage the internal ceramic, this is far safer when done carefully. After soaking, it's important to rinse thoroughly with distilled water and fully dry the sensor before reinstalling it. Trick number 5, the gasoline or acetone bath. Imagine a high-end performance shop where every second matters and even a slightly sluggish engine is treated as a serious problem. In these fast-paced environments, technicians sometimes face oxygen sensors so coated in oil, grime, and burnt residue that normal cleaning methods simply fail. Instead of immediately replacing an expensive part, because in some cases you have to fight fuel-based carbon with powerful solvents. When an engine burns oil, it creates a sticky varnish that coats the sensor like a plastic film, blocking it from reading properly and confusing the engine's computer. This deeper cleaning approach involves carefully removing the sensor and soaking the tip in a strong solvent bath like acetone or fuel-based cleaner. These solvents are designed to dissolve heavy, oily buildup that basic cleaners can't touch. The sensor is left to soak for several hours, giving the liquid time to break down the hardened layer and reach into the small openings around the sensing element. By the next day, the tip often looks noticeably cleaner, and engine behavior like idle stability can improve after reinstalling it. Of course, it must be fully dried before going back into the car. Any leftover fumes or moisture can cause issues. When done correctly, this method can restore function to a sensor that many shops would simply throw away, saving both time and money while bringing lost engine performance back. Trick number 4, specialized oxygen sensor spray. For years, cleaning an oxygen sensor was risky because most chemicals were too aggressive for its delicate internal ceramic element. If the wrong solvent was used, it could damage or even destroy the sensor, turning a slightly dirty part into a completely useless one. Many DIY attempts with general-purpose degreasers made things worse, leaving behind residue that later baked onto the sensor and created an insulating layer. That layer blocks accurate readings and can make engine performance worse instead of better. To solve this, manufacturers developed dedicated oxygen sensor cleaning sprays. Unlike harsh all-purpose cleaners, these are designed to evaporate quickly and leave no residue behind. They safely break down soot and carbon while protecting the sensitive sensing components. The process is simple. Remove the sensor and spray directly into the protective metal housing, allowing the pressurized cleaner to reach deep inside the small openings. This helps flush out buildup that basic soaking methods might miss, giving a more controlled and precise clean. After drying and reinstalling, the sensor can often regain proper function, helping restore correct air-fuel readings and smoother engine operation. It's a targeted, professional-style cleaning method you can do at home, without the risks of damaging one of the most sensitive parts in your exhaust system. Trick number 3, the soft nylon scrub. A veteran shop mechanic once fixed a car that 3 different scanners couldn't solve. His tool wasn't expensive equipment, it was a simple old toothbrush, because sometimes liquid cleaners aren't enough to break through a hard, crusty carbon layer. That glass-like buildup forms when an engine runs too hot for too long, baking deposits onto the oxygen sensor. While many people think the sensor is just a solid metal piece, it's actually a delicate component protected by a metal shield with tiny ventilation holes. If those holes get clogged, the sensor can't breathe, meaning exhaust gases don't reach the sensing element properly. And when that happens, the engine's computer starts getting bad data. This simple fix uses a soft nylon brush to gently remove the outer layer of dirt. The goal isn't to polish anything, it's just to reopen the airflow paths. Hold the sensor facing downward so any loosened debris falls away instead of getting pushed deeper inside. Use light, quick strokes until the metal openings become visible again. Never use wire brushes or metal tools, because even a small scratch can permanently damage the sensor's accuracy. Done carefully, this basic step can restore proper airflow through the sensor and help it work as intended again, using nothing more than a cheap brush and a few minutes of attention. Trick number 2, the penetrating oil creep. Rust can turn a simple sensor swap into a disaster. Snapped parts, damaged threads, even a ruined exhaust. Many people make it worse by forcing it with brute strength. That's how repair bills explode. Experienced mechanics don't fight it. They let chemistry do the work. Over time, heat and corrosion can fuse the sensor threads to the exhaust pipe. So instead of forcing it, the smarter move is patience. Spray a good penetrating oil directly where the sensor meets the pipe. This thin liquid seeps into tiny gaps between the rusted threads, slowly breaking the bond from the inside. The key is to apply it while the metal is cold, then let it sit, ideally overnight. By morning, what felt impossible often loosens with a simple turn. This method protects the threads and can save you from replacing the entire exhaust system. Because getting the sensor out cleanly is half the job, the rest comes down to making sure everything still works perfectly once it's back in. Trick number 1, the reference hole clear. A mechanic once replaced a brand new sensor, yet the problem didn't go away. The issue wasn't inside the exhaust. It was a tiny, almost invisible hole on the outside of the sensor. Most people don't realize this, but an oxygen sensor doesn't just read exhaust gases, it also needs clean outside air to work properly. That air acts as a reference point to calculate the correct fuel mixture. If this small vent hole gets blocked by dirt, road salt, or grime, the sensor loses accuracy. When that happens, it sends false signals to the engine's computer, leading to rough, idle, and poor fuel economy. The fix is surprisingly simple. You don't need chemicals, just compressed air to clear out any debris blocking the vent. Keeping this tiny airway open is key to proper sensor performance. Because sometimes the problem isn't a broken part, it's a blocked one, and once it's cleared, your engine can run the way it was meant to.